This episode of The Apartment Guys is being brought to you by Greenlight Equity Group. Greenlight Equity Group acquires and operates cash-flowing multifamily assets in progressive metropolitan markets such as Salt Lake City, Idaho, San Antonio, Oklahoma City, and Columbus, Ohio. Greenlight targets consistent, solid returns for its investors and a healthy environment for residents by operating high-quality, safe, clean, affordable apartment communities. To learn more about Greenlight and to sign up for the investor list, go to www.glequitygroup.com.
Welcome to The Apartment Guys, where we dive deep into all things multifamily investing. Our mission is to educate, inspire, and empower real estate investors to reach their highest potential. Each week, host Tate Seamer interviews high-level guests from all over the industry who are sure to bring valuable, actionable ideas that will propel your career to the next level. Whether you're just starting out or a seasoned investor, you are in the right place. And now your host, the apartment guy, Tate Seamer.
All right, everybody, welcome back. Another episode of The Apartment Guys coming at you. Today, I've got Mr. Ruben Greth in the house. Ruben is a fellow podcast host. He has a podcast called The Capital Raiser Show, which I recommend subscribing to immediately. It's all about raising capital for commercial multifamily assets. And he has on experts every week that are all about how to get this done, how to get these deals closed, how to raise the capital you need to get these deals closed. And Ruben has a great show based on that. We get into some fun subjects in this show. We get philosophical, we get spiritual. It's really fun. So hope you enjoy it. With that, I also want to remind you to please download the free ebook that I published called FIRE, which stands for Financially Independent, Retire Early via Apartment Investing. All about replacing your W-2 job income with passive cash flow from cash flowing apartments. And this is very possible and attainable, guys. Like, financial freedom is very, very attainable through investing in apartments. And that's what this book is about. That's what I'm here to help you understand every week on this show. Please go to www.glequitygroup.com for that download. Again, glequitygroup.com. So without further ado, let's jump right into it with Mr. Ruben Greth. Welcome, everybody, back to All-Star episode of The Apartment Guys. I'm really excited to have Mr. Ruben Greth with me today, talking about capital raising with Mr. Capital Raising himself. When you have a podcast that's specifically about raising capital for multifamily investments and you have 100,000 downloads, holy moly, that's amazing. Congratulations on that, by the way.
Thank you.
You've earned some cred in the world, let's say, at that point. And I've certainly gotten a lot out of your podcast. We'll talk a lot about that. But Ruben, welcome, sir.
Thank you.
Really appreciate you being here on the show.
Pumped up, man, to be here. Super stoked, dude. I need to come out and go snowboarding with you up in Utah, dude.
Heck yeah.
I know that you were recently in Sedona, which is also one of my favorite places on the planet. So we definitely need to spend a little more time together. So I'm really excited to be here.
I agree. Yeah. So Ruben is coming to us from Phoenix, his Phoenix area office, and spends time skiing up around Flagstaff at Snow Bowl. And I ski mostly in Utah at Snowbird. But I was in Sedona just up till about, 3-4 days ago. And Northern Arizona is such a treat, just beautiful in so many different ways. And wow, I love being there.
You know what? I really love Utah as well. Like, I've been up in Kanab, I've been to Zion and the Escalante National Park, Capitol Reef, Bryce. Man, there's so much to see up there. It's just amazing camping. I know that you like to camp as well. I'll let you, you can guide me. But man, I love it. Utah's amazing.
So you basically got a show today with two podcast hosts, and both of us like to kind of freeform and jam, right? So this should be a lot of fun. And no, by all means, rock and roll, Ruben. If you got something you need to say it. So quick little background on Ruben. We mentioned Ruben's podcast. It's about raising money for multifamily syndication. It's called the Capital Raiser Show, where he gets to learn from the best multifamily syndicators in the country. And how many episodes do you have at this point?
So I've released about 130 at this point, at the time of this recording, about 130, a little more than that. And then I have like another 40 that has been pre-recorded that I have not released. And I've done a variety of series, right? So we did the Raising Money Minute. I have this one on mindset. We're about to introduce one on limited beliefs and how to conquer those with we're going to call that the Raising Money Mentor. So I do a bunch, even the Bakerson Archives, where we talk about my team's history, because we've done 17 syndications, all in Arizona. And I think I'm missing one or two. We're going to start one in Spanish soon. So we go in a variety of directions. And like you said, there is no directional flow. Like whatever we talk about is not pre-planned. Right. And I love running the show that way.
Yeah, right. Perfect. So you mentioned Bakerson. Bakerson's your company that you are capital manager for. You do marketing, brand awareness, and capital raising for the company. You've gone full cycle on 850 units, all in Arizona.
Yep.
Started by raising $650,000 of joint venture money from social media to buy some small multifamily deals in Phoenix during the crash.
That was fun.
Yeah, nice. So literally like post-crash, like, or just before the crash? How did that work?
Oh, man, it was an amazing, amazing time in Arizona. I mean, at least if you're buying, right? For all the people that were going through short sales and losing money, probably not so fun. But for the investor that was buying stuff, like we were taking down units at 20,000, in some cases less than that during the crash. And it was just an amazing time. There was a lot of weird stuff going on in Arizona at that time. The economy was suffering from the crash, right? All of the funky loans that were given to anybody that could breathe affected the entire country. But we had this additional law. I forget which one it was, but it made Hispanics very challenging to get employment, right? So they really cracked down on people that didn't have a specific social security number. And like all these Hispanics left at the same time that the crash was happening, and units across the city just became vacant very fast. Everybody went to California, Utah, Texas, and that created a situation for investors to come in and swoop up all these multifamily units at extremely ridiculous prices. And so we took down a 12 unit, a 4 unit, a 3 unit, another 4 unit. And I did this by just following around a bankrupt investor from San Diego that came into town and was just like, hey, this is going to be the biggest transfer of wealth in human history, at least for Arizona. And I was like, can I just follow you around and record you on videos explaining your business model, how you're taking these down, where you're going to get the capital from, what you're going to do to reposition them, how you're going to relist them and tenant occupy them like in a matter of 15 days in a very aggressive time scale. And sure enough, like just by putting these really crappy videos on YouTube with like this funky rap music, we raised $600,000 from people in a matter of about 9 months. And then we went our different ways, but it was so much fun. And it was my introduction to raising capital. It was a great time.
Wow, how different things are now in Phoenix. Right. Holy moly. Fastest growing city in the country, basically, depending on what month you're talking about looking at it. But
right.
Oh my gosh, how things have changed. So you've been raising money through co-GPs. We'll talk a little bit about that as well. And been working like I have on building your database of LP investors, otherwise known as like passive investors, capital partners. We'll talk about that as well. So, and you have your bachelor's from ASU, Arizona State Sun Devils, right?
Right. Yeah, I'm wearing an ASU shirt right now.
Right on. My business partner, Carl York, is a Sun Devil himself. Yeah. And you speak Spanish?
Yeah. Hablo español, eu falo portugués. I practiced Italian, German, and French in college, but that was ages ago, probably like 20 years ago.
Nice. So Did you grow up in Arizona then?
I did. Born and raised, native Phoenician. Not a lot of us, but all of us grew up together here in Phoenix. So like someone says frequently, hey, I've never met a Phoenician. It seems like it's a transplant city. Everybody's moving in. But like all the people that have, been born here, they all know each other because we went to school together.
Interesting. So how'd you find your way, kind of thumbnail version of finding your way from growing up in Phoenix to having a podcast about raising capital in multifamily and putting together, big capital raises like you're working on right now?
Yeah. So I split up from my original multifamily partner that we would take down fourplexes together and things of that nature. And after I split up with him, I had this limiting belief that multifamily partners didn't grow on trees. So I was like, how do I do this? All I knew was fourplexes. I wanted to do it by myself. I was very bitter. And I was like, I don't want new partners. I want to do this by myself. I came up with this plan. I was going to buy a fourplex and then continue to pay down the debt, multiply my portfolio by doubling, get another fourplex, and then, to go from one fourplex to two fourplexes to four fourplexes to 16 fourplexes. And I knew that the momentum wouldn't be a perfect trajectory of that model, but I wanted to acquire 128 units consisting of 32 fourplexes, something like that. And someone's just like, why don't you just take down 128 units now? I'm like, I don't know what that means. I've never heard of taking it down that fast. And they introduced me to this concept called syndication, where you take investor pools of money and partner up with those people and buy large apartment complexes. So I was like, I need to figure this out. This sounds amazing, right? So everybody's talking about it. There's a variety of podcasts that have the moral imperative to educate the public, which is walking around blind thinking that all they can do is invest in stocks for the most part to retire, and then convince them and help them understand that you can do this as a team. So I asked my broker who had sold me all my little multis back during the crash, who do you know that's syndicating? He's like, well, I sold a $5 million property to Bakerson last year. And I was like, can you set something up? Because I'm interviewing all these different syndication gurus that I'm prepared to drop like 30 grand to have them teach me. I want to talk to some real syndicators, not some gurus. Let me see if I can ask them, like, how do I start in this field, right? Who do I need on my team? How do I get it all set up? What kind of conversations do I need to have with lawyers? And I interviewed Bakerson and I was like, hey, so I'm very curious about this syndication thing. How do I put my team together? And they're like, well, what do you care for? And I'm like, well, I have a little bit of a track record on social media raising capital. And I'm pretty sure that multifamily, because of the generational wealth, the tax benefits, and the cash flow, that I want to pursue this particular commercial real estate asset class. And they're like, oh, you know what? We need somebody that can raise capital. We need somebody that does social media. Why don't you just join us? I'm like, sweet. So immediately, because of the thought leadership platform that I had created on YouTube back during the crash, I was like, I know that I can at least do that again. But people were talking about, you need to start a podcast. I read Joe Fairless's book, the best ever apartment syndication book. It talked about creating a thought leadership platform. I'm like, I'll just start a podcast. And since I'm going to be raising capital for this company, why not start the podcast about that specific subject? I'll be able to learn from the best syndicators, or at least whoever I can attract to my show, and pick their brains about how they did it. And as of today, I think like almost 2 years later, nobody else has started a show on raising capital. And I think because it's so niche specific and targeted, it's grown like wildfire because nobody else has that topic that they're talking about on a regular basis. Yeah, people talk about raising capital on their show, but it's not every show.
Right.
So I targeted that, and to this day, I think I have a monopoly on the raising capital podcast industry because nobody else is willing to start a show about that topic, which I don't understand. But
I think it takes some bravery, honestly, to niche like that, because in some ways you are limiting yourself to certain guest pool, I guess, so to speak, and you're limiting your topic. Depending on how you do things and how you contextualize things, you can look at it like you're limiting your topic pool by niching like that. That said, you can do an episode on mindset that anybody can benefit from, that's going to really benefit your niche, right? You can do an episode on why multifamily and understanding the ins and outs of multifamily that's going to really benefit your niche. So I think it's brilliant, Ruben, and all the gurus that in this business that are all about thought leadership platforms, niche, right? Like that's what it's all about.
Separating yourself from everybody else, doing something that nobody else is doing is a big part of podcasting. And multifamily syndication. Like, how do you separate yourself if you're a multifamily syndicator from the sea? It's an ocean of syndicators. How do you separate yourself and make yourself attractive to people? And if you're doing the same thing, if you have the same website, if it's all buildings, if it's all graphs and numbers and hypotheticals, then you're really not standing out. So what do you do? In my case, I started a show on raising capital. And like you mentioned, it doesn't really attract passive investors. But you know what it does is, because of my audience, they're looking to scale their real estate business. A lot of them have databases already. We've been able to attract some co-GPs, some general partners to come into our deals. And sure, we have to give a piece of our business away to them. But man, it's so much faster to raise capital when you have somebody that's got a pool of limited partner investors to basically raise capital for your deals. So that's been a lot of fun.
Yeah. So for listener, co-GP stands for co-general partners, co-general partnership. And basically that would be somebody that would come into your group as the operational sponsorship group, or the general partnership group, another way of saying that, and would essentially be another part of your team, another part of your group, and may or may not, in the SEC's eyes, have their own pool of investors to bring to the table to potentially invest in that particular deal. So it's a way of, I bring up the SEC thing, and I don't want to get too in the weeds with that, but
I'm cool. I'll go there.
Yeah, I don't know if we maybe can, but I'll just say that, I think that, let's go there. So, in the SEC's eyes, everybody on the general partnership needs to be doing the things that general partners do.
They have to have ongoing duties in order to raise capital legally. Yeah. Because if you're just raising capital and then you disappear, that is raising capital for a security. And if you're doing that, you need to have some type of a license, whether it's a Series 6 or Series 77. I don't even know all of those different licenses because they don't pertain to me. You don't need them to be a capital raiser. What you do need is to have an ongoing, how should I put this, a duty that you have to participate in after you close. So whether that's investor relations or underwriting or acquiring the loans or making decisions on the remodel or having something to do with the construction management, if you have some kind of ongoing participation, then you're cool. And that allows you to get paid based off of the performance that you create within that general partnership. And if you don't do that, you can get in trouble. So for the most part, how do it's a curious question that a lot of people are really afraid to answer. I asked them on my show, how did you negotiate what portion of your GP that you would get based off of the amount of capital that you would raise? And that is a very tricky question because you can't get paid based off of the amount of capital you raise. You have to get paid based off of the entire performance that you're creating within that organization. But if you give somebody a matrix of like a sliding scale, hey, I'm going to participate in this, that, the other, whether that's construction, underwriting,
asset management,
investor relations. The list goes on. As soon as you have somebody write down, this is what I'm going to do, and you hand that to your lawyer, then legally you can change the amount of percentage that they own of the company based off of their full-blown participation in the deal, which allows you to, if you say, hey, I'm going to give you 25% of the company and you're going to raise 25% of the capital, and then they only raise like 5% of the capital, then you're stuck with that. But the sliding scale based off of their total amount of things that they do for the business allows you to change that number. So that's the way that a lot of people navigate this world, because that's not the only thing that they're doing. They're not just raising capital, they're doing everything else.
Right. Well said. That's co-GP in a nutshell. And there are groups out there that kind of specialize or niche in being co-GPs. We've talked to in our current capital raise that we're doing for our Central Ohio 179 unit asset. We've talked to numerous co-GP candidates that we didn't end up doing anything with, but would certainly do something with in the right situation. Like you said, it's an extremely efficient vehicle to getting a deal done.
People are scaling their businesses by bringing in co-GPs all over the country. And I've seen it, like in some cases, like up to 8, 10 GPs, co-GPs that are all raising capital. They're all doing a variety of other ongoing duties as well. And they're blowing up. They're scaling from, 1,000 units to 5,000 units, or 100 units to 500 units. But it's growing their businesses incredibly well. Particularly, there's some new softwares out there that allow you to have your own investment management portal, and they don't really connect with the general partner. They see all your stuff, which is very interesting for the fund model, right? Because I want to create a fund that raises money and then invests passively in other syndicators deals across the country, because not everybody's interested in specific investment philosophies or specific markets. But because I've met so many people on the show, met capital raisers, and I've met sponsors, and I want to be the intermediary for the two by creating my own fund of funds. So invest with other co-GPs into my fund that can then go and invest passively in other people's deals and get a better internal rate of return and other metrics, because instead of bringing a $50,000 check, I'm bringing $1 million check. So that's a really cool model in itself, something that I'm really pursuing right now.
Yeah, that's awesome. I think you're onto something there. Again, being in a position of needing, let's just say somewhere between $2 and $8 million for this most recent raise. I know that's a wide range. Being in that scenario, you need to have plan B and plan C in place if you're raising capital. And because you never know with soft commitments that you're getting along the way, how those are ultimately going to pan out. And, they're not all going to pan out at the end of the day. So, all that said, having somebody like you, Ruben, in place that has an option for, like you say, $1 million check or a few $1 million to get a deal done is going to be a model for a lot of success, I think, for sure.
Yeah, people call them preferred equity shops or private money shops, things of that nature. But yeah, that's exactly what I want to create. I want to invest in other people's deals. I want to find people that are looking for deals, because deals are hard to find. If you can connect with other sponsors that have something, supposedly, I think probably in terms of bigger money, there's unlimited resources. I mean, I've come across a lot of institutions that are like, hey, we want to invest, but the minimum that we write a check for is $5 million. So, you know what I mean?
Yeah, that $5 million threshold, you hear that all the time. And I think you're right. You do get, once you get above that threshold and your capital need is more than $5 million, and even better, more than $10 or $20 million, ironically, I think the easier it gets to get good sources on board.
That's really unusual and strange, and yet that is the truth. Because we've been trying to raise for a small deal in a tertiary market that does not cash flow, and the feedback that we've been getting is we want big assets in big markets that are cash flowing from day one. And the bigger, the better. If it's 400 units, amazing.
Yeah.
That's more attractive than a 200 unit.
Absolutely. Yep. And like you say, those are hard to find. So you go back to my company, what we do and have really like cut our teeth on and gotten halfway decent at is finding deals either through broker relationships or direct to seller, direct to owner marketing and whatnot. So that's the value that my team is going to continue to bring to the table. And we're doing a lot of the things now that you're doing or have done or done fairly recently with Bakerson in terms of really starting to build your passive investor database and your infrastructure for harnessing investors from, the online thought leadership platform and the referrals, et cetera. So talk a little bit about what that's like. So you're definitely focused on this co-GP thing, and that's a great strategy that you're working. How much energy, time are you putting into the LP thing? And do you anticipate that changing at all? And how is that going to play into your operations?
Well, even with a company that comes in and decides to bring either 90% of the pref equity or 90% of the raise, you still pretty much almost always have to at least bring 10%. And that 10% typically comes from your own limited partners. So when I came to Bakerson, they had tapped out their friends and family. Their friends and family had already invested in all of their deals, and their money was already placed in those deals. So I had to figure out what is the best way to raise capital. And for me, the co-GP model was good, but we still need to focus on the LP side of things because we're going to need that money at some point and ongoing. So I hired a company called Good Egg Investments. They have a program called Real Estate Accelerator that teaches like avatar creation, keeping investors warm between leads, website development, a variety of different topics that help with the limited partner database building, that creation of that database. So we're slowly implementing that, but it takes time because you have to take people through this process of getting them to know, like, and trust you, and then explaining why you like multifamily and making sure that they resonate with that, because you can offer somebody a 50% return on investment on a cow farm, but if they don't understand cows, they're never going to invest with you. So you get them to know, like, and trust you, explain why multifamily, you find out their pain points, and then you take them through this third level of the process, which is to explain what it feels like to invest with you. When are you going to get your distributions? When are you going to get communicated with? When are you going to get your capital back? Are you going to get your capital back soon? Are you going to invest in a 5-year deal? Like most people, are you going to invest in a generational wealth or legacy kind of asset where you just keep it forever? And once they can understand what it feels like to invest with you, then you present the deal. When I came to Bakerson, they were presenting the deal thinking, oh, if the deal's good enough, we'll get the capital. And then they found that after they had tapped out their friends and family database, that was not the case. And we had to restructure our entire capital raising system and infrastructure to what most people do, which is to nurture and educate people, which it doesn't feel like capital raising for the most part because you're not selling. So a lot of people think that raising capital is marketing and like hard selling or some kind of a sales gimmick, and there is some scammers out there, so you got to be careful with that. But for the most part, it's just basically having conversations with people and getting them to enjoy hanging out with you. And once they like you enough, they end up investing with you if you can provide them with a deal.
Yeah, it's a long game with passive investors, for sure. That said, I guess I was one of the kids in high school that crammed last night before the exam, and I think that building our capital raising system, our infrastructure, was something that didn't know what I didn't know about how needed it was, even though I had mentors in my life telling me, like, here are some things that, you should be doing, and you should build a thought leadership platform, which I did, obviously, that podcast and the YouTube channel and whatnot. And you should have a lead magnet with a landing page that's integrated into your CRM that has automated email going out. And that's all stuff that when you are working really, really hard to find deals and get deals under contract and get them done, that is like another whole massive universe of activity that I just didn't make time for, to be responsible about it. And I did a number of the things, right? Like, again, the podcast but now we have in place a downloadable ebook called FIRE, Financially Independent Retire Early, about through investment in apartments specifically, just kind of creating that vision. It's a short ebook for people to kind of create a vision for investing. And then, from there, we've got the whole investor list, subscribe type stuff going on. But man, it's been a long sprint, like not a marathon, but a all out sprint, putting this stuff in place with a deal on the table and a couple deals on the table as we've scaled up into this larger asset size,
Yep.
A lot of work.
Yeah, man. So there's so many different strategies, even on the LP side, in order to acquire capital and things that you can do as a sponsor, right? So we're talking about different ways that you can tell stories, strategies versus tactics, talking about mindset. So let me tell you a story about an investor, and we'll call this investor Ivan, right? So Ivan is a CPA, and he's thinking to himself, hey, man, I'm 65. I want to retire soon. Some of my clients have had success in real estate. They're investing in limited partnerships, and I see them. They're getting great tax benefits. They're cash flowing. And I'm thinking to myself, if I'm Ivan, how do I learn about this? Because I want to be on a beach. I'm getting ready to retire. I want to hang out with my grandkids. And this roller coaster of a ride that is the stock market is just really taking me on a journey where if I invest $100,000 and it goes up 20%, it goes up to 120. And then when it goes down by 20%, you're stuck at 96,000. Or if you're at 100,000 and it goes down by 20%, you're at 80,000. And then it goes up and you're still at 96,000. With a 20% gain. So regardless of which direction the stock market is going, it's just crazy. And I'm tired of this. And I have to figure this out. And if I make a mistake, it could really put me back because $100,000 is all that I have. So I'm going to go and study what I need to do to learn from this thing called multifamily syndication and investing passively in a deal. And I think it's important for me to like somebody and really trust them before I invest, because if I get this thing wrong, I could be under a bridge or living in a bus, or I could lose my entire nest egg. And it's just a really major challenge for me. And I think when you tell people that story, first of all, the passive investor is not like, oh my God, they're selling me a deal. Guards up, right? Now they're just looking for parallels. So this story selling strategy is really cool for a lot of people. And then you can really talk about if you make a mistake in a regular purchase, hey, no problem, I can replace it tomorrow. But if you make a mistake in an investment, that could be your entire life savings. So it's really a different play. But people that are listening to your story are looking for parallels. So I really love the story selling strategy because people are not, they don't have their guards up, right? So I really like that. That's one strategy that you can take. Other people talk about, there's so many things when it comes to capital raising. Like, do you have the automations? Do you have the technology? Do you have an investor management system? Do you have different ways to connect with people? Do you have a meetup? Do you have a podcast? Do you have a YouTube channel? Do you actively participate and engage on different social media platforms? Or do you have robots on there trying to engage for you? All of these things really start to accumulate if you can dial in a variety of different ways to access people and to give them touch points to you and your business. That really becomes powerful, because now when somebody talks to my company or somebody else in my company and they're like, oh, you're associated with Ruben? he's the guy that does the meetup, right? Or he has the podcast, or I see him on social media. And like you've done 17 syndications. I've seen you. And like the more touch points they get and different members of your team that they get access to, the more they begin to trust you. So it is a very big challenge to get in front of as many people as possible in such a big variety of ways so that they begin to trust you. And it is a long, enduring process. Just like podcasting, right? You have to be in it from day one with an intention to continue for as long as you can. In my case, I want to get to 1 million downloads or possibly 5 to 10 years of doing this. And I know that through that process, because of my devotion and commitment, that I will get paid in an exact ratio for the need for what I do, the ability to do it, and the difficulty there will be in replacing me. Because not everybody's got a show on the topic that I do. So you start applying all these different things and just going forward with it. It can be frustrating when you don't really get results from all of this effort that you're putting in day one. But Tim Bratz, who I think you've interviewed on your show, gave me an example, I think it was him, about an airplane taking off burns the majority of its fuel on the takeoff, and then once it gets airborne, then it just coasts. Yep. And by the time it lands, so same thing with this business. You have to spend the majority of your time without getting paid in the beginning, but at the end, if you're committed to it, you will reap the rewards of making the money for yourself, for your children, for your investors, and having a great impact on multifamily communities across the nation or wherever it is that you invest, because now people will have a nicer home to live in. And there's all kinds of other benefits associated to that, like all of the business and entrepreneurial or even employee jobs that you're creating, whether it's like your broker, your insurance agent, your cost seg agent, your construction people, property all manager. Of these, I mean, the list goes on and on. The impact that you're having in multifamily is so 10x in comparison to like a single family, because you're affecting so many people's lives. And it's a big cycle and a big wave and ripple effect that you're creating across the country or the world even, because you're giving so many people jobs and affecting people where people live and a bunch of other stuff. So it's a really fun business.
Mm-hmm. And if making an impact on the planet is your gig, like if that's your jam, this is a really fun place to do that. And I share that ethic with you, Ruben. To me, it's not worth doing anymore professionally if it's not having a positive impact on people's lives. And this has such a remarkable, we're about to buy 70 units in Columbus that are just hammered right now, and doors falling off the hinges, boarded up windows, mold, etc. Like
awesome,
ugly. And I cannot wait to make 70 families' lives better by going in and spending, $500,000 on those units and improving them.
Yeah, that gets me juiced up too. And what's funny is like when you fix up a property, like the neighboring properties fix up too, and there's another ripple effect in that regard as well.
Yeah, no doubt. So I want to switch gears for a second.
Yeah.
We've talked about a lot of the reasons why multifamily, right? But you've got a really diverse business background and you've done a lot of different things, and you're a super smart guy and very resourceful. Can you kind of thumbnail for me, basically, for you personally, why multifamily in particular?
For me, multifamily is more of a personal thing because it's kind of an homage to my father, who was a single family investor. And he passed when I was young, but I always wanted to be like him, right? So every aspect of him I've followed. I've been really excited about multifamily because it's like, if I make it in multifamily, I do him right. But there's all kinds of amazing benefits too, right? So I took this course, or I should say I went to this educational platform that taught 30 different single family strategies and one multifamily strategy. And when I got into the multifamily class and it talked about NOI and cap rates and your ability to affect, other people and the generational wealth and the tax benefits and the cash flow. I was just like, I'm sold. That's what I want to do. I can have the greatest impact on my own family, create generational wealth for them, and I can help a lot of people along the way. So for me, that became the sexiest business within the commercial real estate asset field. Multifamily also has great recession-proof capacities, right? So during the crash, multifamily went really well. Same thing with COVID. So you see hotels and other businesses suffering greatly, but multifamily has been very strong throughout this. And I believe in the future, because people can resonate with multifamily, because almost everybody's lived in an apartment, the money that has been lost in industrial and retail and in other forms of commercial, they will probably take that money and say, okay, so we've been suffering. Where are we going to place this money? And it's going to move into multifamily because of all these benefits, the cost segregation, the interest only, taking into consideration that the interest rates are really low, that you can find some deals occasionally if you look hard enough. Yep. And that once you purchase this asset, it's going to probably do really well through no matter what cycle is happening. And we've been studying a little bit of history recently at Bakerson, and over the last 200 years, since the 1800s, a real estate crash has occurred on average every 16 to 18 years. And the last one we had was around 2009. So in 2025, we'll probably, if we follow history, which typically happens, we'll probably experience another crash. And where do you want to have your money when that crash happens? Probably multifamily is going to be your safest bet, comparatively speaking, to the other commercial real estate assets. I love real estate. I love multifamily for those reasons, right? So it helps you, helps your family, helps your investors, cash flow, gives you the freedom, allows you to travel. It's just a hard niche to crack into because it's such a complex, moving business. And that's why you need to surround yourself with the right team in order to advance. Because if you try to do it by yourself, you're pretty much screwed. It's really challenging to get out of single family if you don't have a team member. And that's why I think a lot of investors, they're like, oh, well, I'll just do single family because I don't have to rely on anybody. But the idea with multifamily is if you can partner up with really intelligent people hopefully that are a lot smarter than you. And by the way, it's always a good idea to not be the smartest person in the room. If you can associate with the right people, then you can scale into large deals, which I think the majority of the American public doesn't even realize that multifamily is an option for them, right? So they think, I need to do stocks, I need to do single family, I need to do stuff alone. Right. And it's our job as podcasters, Tate, to educate and inform people that they actually don't have to be this mega rich person to invest in multifamily. You can do it just by aligning with the right people.
Right. You said it so well earlier in the show that you and I have a moral imperative to educate people about that opportunity. And I couldn't agree more. It is an asset class and an opportunity that, if you have a lot of times as little as $25,000, $30,000 sitting around that needs to be utilized and deployed somewhere that could get a pretty predictable double-digit return over the course of 3 to 5 to 7 years, something like that. That's accessible, and then you talk about obviously higher investment levels as a passive investor and what that can produce when you've got a 16, 15, 18% internal rate of return or average annual return. These are the deals that we're seeing, and those are the kind of deals that as limited partners and passive investors, once you're locked into deal flow and to seeing deal opportunities from people like myself or Ruben or other syndicators out there, you're going to see those kind of deals come across. And it's like, wow, it is accessible. It's a lot less daunting than you might think. I think all of us that are in multifamily can remember the moment or something like the moment where apartments went from becoming something that somebody else with a lot more money does to something that I can do. Like that whole mindset shift is absolutely huge. We talk about it a lot, like that aha moment where your belief in what's possible fundamentally is transformed around what you can achieve specifically with apartments. So I love this aspect of our job, so to speak, talking about this. It's good stuff, man.
It's a lot of fun. You can concentrate on storytelling. You can concentrate on avatar creation and creating tactics and targeting specific investor profiles and learn how to talk to them. But at the end of the day, I think it's a lot easier if you're just out there trying to make friends, right? Because if people feel that you're a friend, they're going to want to work with you. It's a natural aspect of relationship creation, is that people like to do business with people that they like.
Yeah.
So I know people that aren't on social media, that don't do any of these tactics, that don't have automations. They just work off spreadsheets. They don't have investor management portals, and they don't struggle raising capital because they know their business and because they know that a majority of this is just creating relationships and or hanging out with the right circles of people.
Right. Well said. All right. So on the note of getting to know, like, and trust people, right? You do some cool things on your show. I really enjoy your show, Capital Raiser Podcast. Mention that once again to everybody. Go find it and listen to it and leave ratings and reviews for Mr. Ruben Greth here and his podcast. But I just want to flip the script on you a little bit and ask you, has anybody ever asked you what your favorite vacation ever was?
No, nobody's ever asked me that. So
for those of you who haven't listened to Ruben's podcast, he has a finale question, series of questions.
I have a lightning round, and that's my first question to everybody, right? So what's the best vacation you ever took?
Best vacation.
For me, best vacation I ever took was, so I broke up with my real estate partner, went back to corporate America, and then one day I just quit. I was like, I can't be behind a desk. And I took off camping with my dogs into Mexico and camped on every beach from Nogales, Arizona, all the way down to Acapulco, and then cruised across, went and visited a bunch of ruins in southern Mexico, and ended up on the Mexican Riviera in Playa del Carmen for 9 months, and just lived I rented my house and just lived very modestly for about a year in Mexico on the beach with my dogs. And that was by far the best vacation, or in this case, maybe you consider it a sabbatical, that I've ever taken. It was just phenomenal. It was living in paradise down there.
What a treat. Like, that's something that you'll have that the rest of your life as a memory. That's awesome. So influential gurus for you, and I wanted to ask you, have you been a part of any masterminds, or are you a part of any masterminds?
So I have a one-person mastermind. I'm a part of a Capital Raiser book club.
Okay.
Some of the personal development that I've done has communities that hang out really closely together, and then they do charity stuff, like in Costa Rica. Like, we went and rebuilt a school in 2011, and another one, I think, in 2008 in Northern California. And I've done some stuff around Phoenix too. Those people actually are a great resource for raising capital too. I've raised money from the personal development field, because if somebody's going to invest $20,000 in their own personal development, they probably are of abundance mindset that invests in real estate or invests in businesses. So that's a great community to tap into. Something I want to get back into. But other than that, let's see. I know that I'm forgetting one. I can't remember, but I do like masterminds a lot.
How about important gurus along the way that have been important to your learning the business and learning your mindset?
Well, that on two aspects, right? On a marketing aspect, Dan Hanford, I love the way that he grows his multifamily investor nation through educating people. And then on a spiritual side, my mentor is Wayne Dyer, who has passed, but I study, I used to listen to him like 24 hours a day, it felt like, or anytime that I went hiking with my dogs, he'd be plugged into my ears. He's really helped me in terms of manifesting, in terms of spiritual peacemaking, in terms of attracting things to myself, in terms of refocusing my energies so that I'm not so money hungry, rather It's more of coming from a place of peace, and it's helped me with my meditation practices. So definitely love Wayne Dyer. His best book for me is called The Power of Intention. That also comes with a 6 CD set. That's also very amazing. So I love Wayne Dyer. Dan Hanford, definitely on the marketing side, not necessarily on the multifamily syndication side, but how he attracts people to his business is just absolutely amazing.
Cool. Yeah, I know both of them. I know Wayne Dyer very well, not personally, but I'm also, I would say, a student of his, and we happen to share the same birthday. He and I do.
Wow.
So
that's pretty
10th.
Cool.
Yeah. Anybody I share a birthday with, that's the one that really jazzes me up the most. I have a deep love for him and his teachings, and I think that he was a big loss when he passed. It's been probably 5-6 years at least.
I think so. Somewhere in that range.
Yeah. Okay. So on that note, you mentioned Power of Intention. Any other great books?
So 2 of them, which are commonly referred to, actually one of them is commonly referred to, Think and Grow Rich. The other one that people don't know about is called The Science of Getting Rich by Wallace D. Wattles, who was the predecessor to Napoleon Hill, and talks a lot about wealth creation and why people require wealth in order to live their best life, right? So if you have these urges to play the piano or urges to create things in your life or to spend money, that is God speaking through you because he wants to have a creative influence. And if you don't have money, you can't acquire things that help you to acquire wealth or help the general public or help the world. So the more money that you can create for yourself, the bigger impact you can make. And that's a great, great book. On the Think and Grow Rich side, I really love the 4th chapter, which is auto-suggestion, because it talks a lot about how to use your own subconscious to bring things into existence. He talks about it more from a mental perspective, but I do find it's a spiritual way that you can use and focus your energies into removing the gatekeeper of your conscious mind. If you can emotionally drive thoughts through that gatekeeper into the real brain that you have, the real spirit that you have, then you can attract all kinds of things. And another book called The Power of Your Subconscious Mind by Joseph Murphy also helped me a lot with that. So
that's a new
love
one.
all of those. Yeah.
Joseph Murphy. Okay. I'll check that one out for sure. That's good stuff. So last but not least, I love this question that you ask, and I got to ask it of you. Have you ever experienced a miracle, Ruben?
Life is a miracle. We are floating through this desolate universe in essentially empty space. And the fact that we're alive is 100% a miracle. But I would say on another note, the ability to manifest and the power to tap into your brain to manifest is a very unique and ongoing miracle that takes place in my life. I attracted my wife this way. I attracted safe passage through Mexico in hurricane-riddled and, federale and thug-riddled Mexico, just because I followed my intuition and tapped into this power, which you can do. And a lot of that I learned from Wayne Dyer. So that in itself is a miracle. The fact that, if I think of a yellow car, I can attract it. I've attracted money for vacations. I've attracted real estate partners. I've done all kinds of things. That is ongoing, miraculous event that's happening for me that a lot of people have access to but don't realize it. And I love that part of being alive in this crazy thing we called life.
Wow, that's inspiring. That's beautiful stuff. Well said, sir. Well, there are probably 3 or 4 episodes that I feel like I would like to do with you based on our little intro episode here. However, neither of us have quite that much time, but man, I've taken away some wonderful stuff. And, for me personally, getting to learn from you, some of the things that you've done and are doing, getting represented to Wayne Dyer. Again, he's somebody that's been a big part of my life, but hasn't been for the last 5 years or so. It hasn't been on my radar as much. So I always listen to the universe when I feel nudged in certain directions. And that particular book, The Power of Intention, is one that I never read of his. So I will likely listen to it on audiobook. Some great thoughts about, why passive, like why be a passive investor and why be in multifamily as a passive investor. Some great stuff there. So
we could have a lot of conversations about that. Some people are like, getting into active syndication and helping a lot of people along the way. But at the end of the day, they want to retire too, just like me. Like, I'd like to hustle for the next 3, 5, 10 years and then basically start passively investing and just live off of that cash flow for the rest of my life and travel the world. So it's not about, like, hey, passive isn't as good as active, or active is not as good as passive, but like, what is the main goal for yourself? If it's generational wealth and making a bunch of money for your kids, like it is for me, and the recognition there is in helping people, which I'm also a big fan of, then I think passive investing is the way to go. That's what I want to do. Like, I'll hustle for a few years because that's what entrepreneurship is, but then I want to go and check out the world for sure.
Yeah. Well, and, like you said, it kind of depends on what you're after, right? Like, if your goal is financial freedom and traveling the world, for instance, and financial independence, retire early, like in the words of the book that I just put out, getting to $5 or $6 or $8, maybe $10,000 a month to cover living expenses, which is going to cover a decent mortgage and a car payment and insurance, like all the things, is not that far away. Like, it's really not that hard of a metric to get your head around getting to when you look at that. It's just a matter of acquiring cash flowing assets that are paying you X number of dollars per door per month. And, setting a goal. For me, it's 20 grand a month is a minimum financial freedom goal. And that's a 3-year goal for me right now. I'm 6 months into it, so it's a 2.5-year goal for me, and I'm probably 25% of the way there.
Nice.
So like, things will keep going in the right direction. And there's this whole law of the first deal too that Michael Blanc talks about quite a bit, where it's amazing how things in this business transform and change after getting that first larger scale apartment deal done, and how much more doable things are after that point.
Same thing with raising capital. After your first capital raise, you successfully do that, then it just becomes a lot easier.
Yeah. This is putting you on the spot a little bit, but do you have a favorite show? Do you remember a show that you did that was your favorite show?
A bunch, honestly.
You've had some good shows. You get into some great conversations.
I really like, people will probably think this is kind of strange because it's not one of my most popular shows, but I did a show with Ola Dantis, and it was all about mindset. Like, probably 80% of the show was mindset. And I just loved the rapport that we had. I need to get him back on my show, or go back on his show, because it's not so much real estate. It's just like, hey, how do we conquer life and how do we have fun doing it? And he's great about that specific topic.
How do you spell his name?
So it's OLAD, I think it's DONTIS or DANTIS, one of those two.
So listeners, go to the Capital Raiser podcast and look up Ola Dantis, do a search on Ola Dantis and find that episode. I'm going to go look for it myself. That's great. I really think the best shows, the best interviews, the most valuable guests are ones that have a real holistic view of this business and of life in general, and have this in its right place and in the right priority in life. And it's easy for people like me. I'm a single guy and I don't have kids. And it's easy for me to get really serious and very, very focused on this business. And it's also easy for me to forget that there's more to life than this sometimes. I solve that by playing hard. I play hard and work harder, I think, realistically, to be real about it. But that said, it does come from a true love of what we're doing. And we talked about the impact that you and I are able to make before both through directly being in multifamily as operators and owners and investors, but also being in the thought leadership and the education space is a real treat. Like, it really feels like a privilege to me.
Yeah, it's so cool connecting with everybody. Everybody in the multifamily industry is so abundant mindseted too. So I love hanging out with multifamily people.
Yeah, it is amazing that way. And I've talked about that with other people on the show, how giving and ready to serve and ready to give people are in general in this space, because it truly is a team sport. Unlike single family, where you go to a single family investor meeting and you got kind of this weird energy of people like kind of elbowing each other, and like, you know, it's a solopreneur kind of venture with single family flipping and wholesaling and whatnot, but or at least you can pull it off doing it that way. It's really hard to pull off apartments and larger scale multifamily on your own. And, you know, the best ones have good teams. The Tim Brotzes of the world, the Michael Beckers, you know, the Corey Petersons, they all have good teams. It's a wonderful space to get to play in. It's, you know, getting to hang out with you during this time and the listeners, and getting to talk to them and share with them about the joy that we get out of doing this and the impact that we hope to continue to make, right? It's a lot of fun. So, Ruben, I just want to thank you for coming on the show. You've been on my list for a long time now, and I've really grown to like your show and like you. So I'm really glad we got to do this.
Yeah, man. It's been great getting to know you. It's kind of funny when you're on a podcast with somebody else and providing value. It's like you get this unique relationship that you build right on the show. So I love that, man. And I'm excited to have you on my show pretty soon too.
Yeah.
And continue building that relationship. And I'll definitely pick your brain about all kinds of cool stuff too.
Can't wait. So we'll do this again on the Apartment Guys, and, you know, maybe a year or so we'll circle back around and talk about all the great things that we've gotten done and how many more hundreds of thousands of listeners we've gotten on for the podcast, right? Yeah, that's awesome.
That'll be cool. Hopefully it'll be hundreds of thousands of dollars that I can increase. Yeah, that's really where it's at, because you're affecting people's lives when you get them to invest in a deal that makes sense for them.
Absolutely. Well said. Well, on that note, listeners, thanks again for listening to another episode of the Apartment Guys. Ruben, thank you for being with me today. This was fantastic. And listeners, we will see you on the next episode. Take care, everybody.
Tate. Yeah, man. Leave Tate a 5-star review, guys.
Thanks. Thank you, Ruben. Yes, please do. If you feel so led, the 5-star reviews are very, very helpful. I'll leave it at that. Yeah, thanks, everybody.
Review. Peace and strength.
Peace and strength. I love it. Take care.
Thanks for listening to The Apartment Guys with Tate Seamer. Tate and friends are grateful to have you as a loyal listener. If you like what you've heard, please subscribe, rate, review, and share with friends on your Apple Podcasts, Google Play, Spotify, or any other podcast platform. Also, check out Tate's YouTube channel for videos of many of these episodes and more. Until next time, take massive action steps and rock on.